Hi, my name is Jaron Mink and I'm a third-year PhD student at UIUC, and today I'll discuss our work on measuring the efficacy of a privacy mechanism in fitness tracking applications. To provide some background, fitness tracking apps are software that allow users to measure activities such as a bike ride using a phone or a dedicated fitness sensor. These measurements often include an activity's distance, speed, and a map of the exercise route. When a user finishes, they can share a map of the activity with other athletes using the app or on a social network. Unsurprisingly, sharing this data can lead to privacy risks. Fitness apps have been linked to property theft and physical safety risks for their users. To prevent this, some fitness apps allow users to create a privacy zone that protects the leakage of sensitive locations, such as a user's home or work address. To create a privacy zone, a user enters an address and then a virtual circle is placed on the map with the address at the center. Users can then choose the size of the privacy zone depending on how much space they would like to protect. Each user can still see their entire exercise route, but friends can only see a shortened version that appears to begin and end at the edge of the zone. These friends can't tell whether the privacy zone exists or which parts of the route are concealed. Unfortunately, if one knows multiple endpoints that intersect with the outside of the circle, then it's a simple geometry problem to reconstruct the privacy zone and the sensitive location. Prior work has shown that this vulnerability can be exploited via algorithms, and thus assumes a threat model where the attacker is technically proficient and can either code or use custom software. But is this algorithm really why we've seen reports of stolen bikes? We believe that common crimes are more aligned with less technically skilled attackers whose inferences are made solely by visual inspections of exercise posts. We believe that this threat model is more consistent with user concerns and more likely to be encountered. To answer this, we conducted a three-part survey guided by 3 questions. First, to determine fitness users' general perceptions and behaviors regarding privacy, participants complete a pre-task survey describing their prior experiences and thoughts. Second, to determine how effective privacy zones are at protecting user locations, participants attempt to infer sensitive locations from privacy zone protected routes. Third, to determine how users perceive the effectiveness and utility of privacy zones, participants complete a post-task survey about their thoughts of the mechanism. Due to time constraints, we'll only discuss the latter 2 questions. To investigate whether privacy zones are effective, we had participants infer sensitive locations from real-world fitness activities. Given a set of privacy zone protected routes, users first select the hidden privacy zone size. Second, users place the privacy zone. And third, users place a pin on the location that they believe is being protected. Each participant performed this task 12 times, and the dependent variable, guess error, was measured as the distance between the true center of the privacy zone and the inferred center. To investigate how map factors affected guess error, we treated the maps according to whether 1 or 3 routes was being shown, and whether the hidden zone was 1/8, 3/8, or 5/8 of a mile in size. Our results can be summarized by a few box plots. The y-axis corresponds to the guess error, and the x-axis corresponds to our evaluated treatment, in this case, the number of displayed routes. We find that the 3 route maps have less guess error compared to the corresponding 1 route maps. We can also see the beginning of a floor effect within the 3 route maps, implying that 3 routes may be the only required information needed to solve the task. Grouping the same data by the hidden privacy zone size, we can see that the smallest privacy zone of 1/8 of a mile results in less guess error than the largest zone of 5/8 of a mile, suggesting that larger privacy zones are more protective. Lastly, by grouping both the number of routes and the zone size, we see an interaction effect, with larger zones increasing the guess error less for maps with 3 routes compared to maps with 1 route. All of these relationships came out as significant. We also measured the proportion of guesses that fell within a suburban house plot of the true location. We find that participants were largely successful, with 1/4 of guesses being correct for 1 route maps and 2/3 correct for 3 route maps. As a point of comparison, the algorithm described in Hassan et al. Was able to de-anonymize 97% of 3 route maps. While lower, we note that even with noise from mturk, regular people can still succeed in a large number of inferences that complex algorithms can succeed in. To learn users' perceptions of privacy zones, we then asked participants a combination of 11 Likert scale and open-ended questions. We asked participants whether privacy zones affected fitness app utility, their privacy preferences for future sharing, and whether they felt privacy zones were effective. Based on user responses, we find that participants largely believed that privacy zones did not impede usability. nearly 70% of participants felt that privacy zones affected utility very little or not at all. When asking participants what privacy mechanisms they would use if they were to share an exercise, 67% of participants noted that they would use privacy zones. And importantly, 90% of these participants noted that they would use privacy zones alongside another form of privacy protection. When asked to explain, participants noted that multiple protections would provide a more complete defense and make them most comfortable. We found that participants' view of privacy zone efficacy depended on both the question perspective and the conditions of the task. When asked from an attacker perspective, how often do you think you were correct in identifying the location? Over all conditions, 48% of participants felt that they were correct somewhat or very often. However, when broken down by route treatment, we find that there is a significant 20% difference between the 1 and 3 route conditions, with those who viewed 3 routes being more confident. We also asked a similar question from a defender-oriented perspective. Specifically, how effective are privacy zones at protecting sensitive locations? 65% of participants believe privacy zones to be very or somewhat effective. Interestingly, when broken down by route condition, we see only a small decrease in perceived effectiveness between the 1 and 3 route condition. This difference was not significant. Additionally, we note that in both conditions, there exists an overlap between those who felt that they were correct in the task yet also found privacy zones to be effective. Given this overlap and indifference of the defender-oriented perspective across route conditions, we speculate that participants in this group may be comparing privacy zones to no defense at all, or were evaluating this compared to the relative impact on user experience. Given these insights, we provide recommendations to improve privacy mechanisms and stakeholder behavior. First, our results suggest new directions for privacy features. For instance, while we focused on the 2018 privacy zone implementation, all current privacy zone mechanisms attempt to hide the fact that a privacy zone exists and assumes that users would not be able to find one if enabled. We find that this assumption is incorrect. An average user can reconstruct a privacy zone with a high degree of accuracy and should be considered in future design. Second, we provide several recommendations to better prevent privacy leakage for users. In all evaluated conditions, at least 10% of inferences were correct. Thus, we recommend that privacy zones be used alongside other protections, such as a private group, to further reduce this risk. Third, we provide ways for fitness tracking applications to increase transparency and trust with their users. For instance, our work finds that privacy zones are vulnerable to visual inferences. These risks, however, are not communicated when a user chooses to use a privacy zone, and thus they might overestimate their own degree of protection. We are only able to present a small fraction of our results, but I would encourage interested viewers to check out the full paper. Thanks so much for listening.